undisclosed location under a farm pond somewhere in the Midwest. Your host is Jim Crowley. This is Slickfish Radio. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Slickfish Radio. I am your host, Jim Crowley. So glad you all decided to join us. We're going to have a lot of fun tonight. We've got professional angler Matt Stefan going to be joining us in just a little bit. So looking forward to talking to him. Also, Shields Fish Fest is coming up. That is March 9th. I'll be there as well. If you're in the Springfield, Illinois area, that is an absolutely awesome store. Awesome store, huge Ferris wheel, saltwater tank. There's going to be a lot of seminars there, a lot of great deals. And if you've been to Shields, you already know. Absolutely fantastic place. Their employees are experts in all their areas, always willing to help. We're really looking forward to going to Shields. Lure Parts Online, been really busy with them lately. We've got a lot of new products coming out. After we get done speaking with Matt, I'm going to tell you some more stuff. Make sure you stay tuned because I'll be giving you discount codes for that, as well as our friends from Cast King. A lot of new stuff coming out from Cast King as usual. I know some of you have been seeing that out there because I've been getting emails and some questions about, have you tried this? Have you tried that? I'm looking forward to some of the stuff too. So it's going to be a real exciting year for us. So we are excited about that. Also, our friends from Mudhole, all the components that I always use to build all my rods come from Mudhole. And as we always tell you, it's a number one stop for everything that is education and information when it comes to building rods. And that show tomorrow night, we're going to show you how to do everything, and all of it's coming from Mudhole. So it's going to be a really cool time tomorrow night. Looking forward to that. And of course, we are powered by our friends over at Dakota Lithium. This will be the third year that I'm running Dakota Lithiums, and overly impressed, actually adding another battery to my boat this year. When we get everything done, we'll do a walkthrough on the boat. We've got new electronics, and we're actually going to be powered by 4 Dakota Lithium batteries this year. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to getting back out on the water and having some fun with that. But I want to bring in our guest. I've been looking forward to having this guy on for a while, and I'm so glad that he was able to join us from his underground bunker. Matt Stefan, thanks for from the tackle bunker there. Thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's the basement bait shop, as I like to refer to it. Yeah, sometimes I walk down here and I just kind of look around and I go, I'm a pretty lucky guy, but you know what? I need more. I need more.
Well, I don't think you would be a sane-minded angler if you said, oh, I have enough stuff. Right? That just doesn't happen, man. We can always find ways to get more stuff and to fit more tackle.
Yeah, I mean the only way I can justify it is if I were a electrician, I would have all the proper tools to be an electrician,
Right.
and because I'm a fisherman, I need all the proper tools to be a fisherman.
You are correct. You know, I've said for years that all rods, reels, lures are just tools to get a job done. And watching your YouTube channel, you explain that a lot. They are tools to you, and you need those tools to successfully complete your job. And you know, you've been at this job for a while now. What, since like 2010 is when you started, somewhere around there, isn't it?
Yeah, fishing at the professional level, 2011, I think was my first year. So I think this is my 14th year fishing at some form or fashion, top level, depending on what circuit it was. But yeah, I started with the FLW tour and, have been fishing high level tournaments since then. But yeah, I've been fishing tournaments since I was probably 16. Started on the Fox Chain of Lakes on the northern side of Chicago and cut my teeth.
Ah,
Kind of that led to me fishing probably 25 tournaments a year at the local level, and kind of that's what paved my way for the professional stuff. I took my winning to the local level and rolled the dice and threw it into the professional level, and it took me about 3 years of kind of spinning my wheels, kind of winning back my entry fees, and then finally was able to kind of figure it out. And uh it's been pretty good since then, but it is gambling to a point, right? So
sure.
there's times where you kind of feel like, is it going to keep rolling or am I going to hit a patch?
Well, if you cut your teeth on the chain of lakes, man, you're definitely fishing in places that have more fish now. So you definitely put your time in. You definitely put your time in over there because that place can be a struggle. And hey, buddy Vance Gordon just chimed in. He said, "Hi, Matt and Jim." Rob Myers just came in. The man is a tackle shop behind him. That's right. I mean, and I think he's having a sale later. He's willing to make a lot of money off of
No,
this if he wants. Nope, none of it. It's not going.
no,
It's not.
I am a hoarder. I am a hoarder.
He's an honest angler. They don't have very many of those, but he said he is honest. What so are you're looking forward more to this year with things going on? I know you're off to a start already. What's coming up? What's the next tournament? What are you looking forward to this year?
Yeah, man, it came fast, and at this point now we are pretty much in the full swing of it. I mean, we've only had one tournament, but I leave tomorrow for Santee Cooper in South Carolina, and then we got that. Come back for a couple weeks, then I've got the Red Crest tournament in Alabama. Home for a couple days, go to the Bassmaster Classic. Home for a couple of days, go to Dale Hollow. I mean, so we're in full swing of it right now. I mean, tournament season has definitely started up, and from that standpoint, it's exciting. I absolutely
Mhm.
love tournament fishing. It's something that I think I will always do as long as I'm physically able to do it. But it definitely it definitely adds a little bit of uh, I won't necessarily say stress because the tournaments aren't stressful, but it's just a time juggling act where you're going from one event to another. You get home, you try to get caught up on things while you were gone, and just a continuous hectic pace for the first half of the year.
Yeah, and you really have to be able to get stuff organized. Have you found that since you started and as you go along in your career that it gets a little bit easier to get more organized, like preparing for the season or as the season goes? Do you find that, or is it still every once in a while it's like a last minute charge to get everything together?
The first tournament of the year is the worst one because you're
Yeah.
always dealing with having to get the boat wrap, line up, you're still sometimes wrapping up sponsor deals. Like there's so many things going on. But once that first tournament hits, then it's kind of like from a prep standpoint, it's a little bit more cruise control. Because for me, I'm pretty organized with respect to what I take to every tournament.
Mhm.
There might be a little bit of fluctuation based on the fishery, but generally speaking, if it's something that I might need from a mechanical standpoint or for the boat or for the truck as I'm traveling, like all of that is grab and throw in the truck. I'm pretty precise as to where I even put it in the truck. It's just one of those things. But getting to that point for the first tournament of the year is always the tough one for sure.
Yeah, I've always, talking to high school anglers and things, and I know you like to do that too, but I've always told them that organization is a key to success. I mean, everything in my
Yeah.
boat is organized depending on where we're going, what part of the country we're going to, what we're going to be fishing for. And especially being a professional angler, you really have to have that kind of down pat because if you didn't, it would be an unorganized mess.
Yeah.
And so do you have like certain parts where you go, hey, I know we're going to Santee Cooper, so these boxes are set for this? Or is it just after all this time now you're just pulling boxes off of shelves and go, I know what I'm going to take when I'm going where?
Yeah, it's more along the lines of what type of fishery we're going to. I separate all my tackle based on I guess technique. So like from a crankbait standpoint, I've got a square bill box, I've got a mid
Right.
running box, I've got a deep diver box, and I'll grab everything I need. Generally speaking, I'll bring a lot more than I need, just or that I think I need in case something crazy happens or I get onto some odd pattern. I'll definitely bring some other stuff that I just keep like in the rental houses when we get there. But from the standpoint of prepping for each tournament, yeah, it's pretty much based on the fishery. And some fisheries are a lot easier to pack for than others. When we were at Toledo Bend to start the year, that was the type of thing where it was like, I'm going to need potentially everything, finesse through power fishing. But if you go to a place like Okeechobee, it's like grab a couple of boxes and you can be good with that.
I'm guessing some of those include black and blue jigs, probably some wacky worms, and and a couple other things. Anything June bug or black and blue,
Yeah.
and there's probably some other things. And thinking about a couple. Kevin Landers just came on here. Hey, Fluffy, how are you, man? So Kevin just came on here, and he said he is organized. One thing I've always enjoyed about your YouTube channel is that even in your presentations, you are organized. How did you develop into the YouTube channel? Because it really is growing and growing on a consistent basis. And I know you're putting stuff out there just about every day. Are you going to be doing that during, for anybody who hasn't seen it before, are you going to be doing that during tournament season as well? Or does
Yeah.
that slow down a little bit?
No, YouTube for me is a really valuable tool from a brand perspective. It's
Sure.
been very valuable for me. So I put a lot of emphasis on it, and at this point I do a daily video, and I've done it for over 3 years straight without
Mhm,
missing a day. And that really just comes down to making sure I've got enough videos pre-recorded. My videos are just short tip videos, anywhere from
mhm.
5 to 10 minutes. So before I go to a tournament, I generally try to have enough videos to get me through that week while I'm gone. And then one of the nice things with the BPT, fishing the BPT, is we get a couple of off days, so I can film a couple videos while I'm there, and not really interfere with practice or the tournament itself. So I definitely put a lot of emphasis into making sure that I'm maintaining that daily video. It can be it can be a little bit of a pain in the butt at times, but uh, it's worth it too. So we'll continue to do it as long as the viewers keep watching them.
Yeah, well, I think they're going to keep watching them because it seems like your numbers keep going up, and you have a really good connection with your audience. And I was talking with somebody about it the other day, and I said one of the things that I've really liked watching your channel is just honest, straightforward information. And what I like, John Cruz, you remind me a little bit of how John Cruz does stuff once in a while too. Is that because your information is honest, and even if you're not working with the company, you still say, "Hey, this is a good bait," and I know for a fact that anglers really appreciate that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
when I'm talking to people, I'm like, "Yeah, I don't work with that company, but they make a great product." And I mean, just because I may not be using it or don't use it as much as the other stuff, they make a great product. And I really like your straightforward approach to it, because that's one great thing about the fishing industry is there's so many different products that we can all choose from. And just because we're not working with a certain company doesn't mean there aren't other products out there that don't work. They obviously do. These are just companies that we do business with. But I bet you've gotten some positive feedback, or a lot of positive feedback from people who probably appreciate the same thing, haven't you?
Yeah, the feedback for the most part's been pretty positive. I have had a couple of calls from companies who are not happy with a review that I did, but that's part of the channel. Is I want to talk openly and freely about fishing tackle and fishing items. And a lot of that is really just because I'm trying to build trust with the viewers. And if I were just
Sure.
to go on there and just always be blatantly promoting sponsor products, at that
Right.
point I'm actually devaluing the platform, but I'm devaluing the sponsor products too.
Right.
And one of the great things is the companies that I work with recognize that, and they want
Hmm.
me to talk about products that I use, that I feel good about. And I think I'd be fooling, or I wouldn't be. I would not be fooling anybody, I guess, if I were to say that I don't use other products. I mean, the fact is, I'm a tournament fisherman, and I'm going to do and use what's necessary to get the job done. And not every company out there makes the best product, or I shouldn't even say the best product, the product that fits my needs.
Hmm.
So from that standpoint, I'm going to have to use other products to get the job done in some circumstances. And from that standpoint, I feel like I should talk freely and openly. One thing with respect to my channel that I had to get over pretty quick when I started it was I had to come to a realization that if I'm going to build a channel that I feel like has a good relationship with my viewers need to trust me, and I
Right.
need to provide them with valuable information. And one thing for sure early in my career was, uh, I always felt like I wanted to keep everything secret. That I had these little things I was doing that was separating me from the pack. And the older I get, the more I recognize that a lot of the talented fishermen out there are using the exact same baits. They're doing everything the same, but recognizing how to generate more strikes, or they're better at finding the fish. And the bait doesn't sometimes matter as much, or the little tweaks you're doing to it don't matter as much. And from that standpoint, I had to kind of overcome that and take more of the approach of, I want to be educational. I want to try to help people catch fish. And at this point now, I kind of have a motto where there's like no secrets on my channel, which
Hmm.
is fine for me. But I can tell you there's other professional anglers that don't necessarily want to share their juice with me either, because there's a potential chance, I guess, that I could share it. Although I am pretty tight-lipped when somebody tells me
Sure.
something else, because I don't want to burn them.
Well, yeah, you got to keep that confidence too, and I agree 100% with you. It's when you have a connection with an audience, they have to be able to trust you, and
Yeah.
you realize that that is happening when they keep coming back. Because I've said this for years, that you can sell somebody something one time, you may never see them again. If you fit them with what they want, and they do well with it, you're going to have a better chance of them coming back to you. And why wouldn't you want to do that? I look at it, and I
Yeah.
think you might the same way. Is that for our sport to grow, we need to pass on what we know. I've always told people, I don't care if you agree or disagree with me. I hope that you get something from it that helps you become a better angler. I don't care if you agree with me or disagree. I just hope that somehow down the line that you become better at it. I want you to take it
Yeah.
farther, than I could take it. And I see that same kind of approach when you're talking on your channel every day. I hope this information helps you. It helps me, but I hope you catch more fish with it. And I really did. That's exactly how I perceive you, as somebody who really wants to help people out there. And I think the audience does too. And I think that's why your channel continues to grow.
Yeah, the reality of fishing is there's no right or wrong answer. Like,
Mhm.
as much as we think we have the answers, we're dealing with living creatures that at any given time can change their mind. And from that standpoint, like,
Yep.
my approach, it always makes me laugh when somebody tells me there's a finite answer to something within fishing, because there really is not. What works for me may not work for another angler, and what works for them may not work for me. But the key is to have confidence in what you're doing, and to recognize that we're all different with respect to what we do. And from my perspective with my channel, I try to at least not come across as, this is what you have to do to catch fish. It's, this is what works for me. If you want to take that and run with it, go for it. If you think I'm crazy, that's okay too, because I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's right. One of my favorite lures of all time to throw for smallmouth is a hot pink X wrap. When you
Yeah.
first show people that, especially in really cold water, and when you show people that, sometimes you'll get that look from the audience like, "Are you kidding?" I'm like, "No, I'm completely serious.
Yeah.
You don't have to do this. I'm just telling you, this has been a really, really great lure for me. Now you may find one in hot orange or whatever color you do. If that works for you, I'm not telling you to switch. I'm just telling you what works for me, and hopefully you can learn from it. Or if you pick a completely different color, hey, flat out the bait works. But you're right, there is no finite answer to anything. We're all going to be able to do something different. I mean, fish really don't think; they react to their environment. So you
Yeah.
may be throwing a bright yellow or a bright pink bait and catch them like crazy. I may throw it and not, because my retriever, whatever at the time, is different. I
Yep.
think one of the reasons, and I know you and I both love to do this, one of the reasons I love to build my own rods is simply because the more I learned about rods and from years and years ago, the more I wanted to go, there's something I can do that's different. I was always been a tinkerer. I always like making lures and doing things like that. And I love getting into building rods. I think it's now been almost 8 or 9 years ago, but I love building rods because it's mine. It's always fun catching fish, but I just think it's so cool to be able to catch fish on a rod that you built, especially when you can match it to exactly what you want. And in a store, I may not be able to do that if I know I can go and build it,
Yeah.
myself. And you've been building rods for a while too. You kind of have that same approach, like, hey, if I want a rod, I think I'll just go make it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when I got into rod building for kind of the same thing. I've always been a tackle tinkerer. I've basically made every type of bait you could make in the fishing industry outside of pouring my own plastic. That's the only thing I've never done, and it's
Mhm.
probably good I haven't gotten into it, because I'd probably have gallons of plastic and blah blah
Plastisol
blah.
everywhere. Yeah.
But yeah, uh, but the crazy part about it, was how much I found making the rods made me that much in tune with the baits that I like to use. Like, you
100%
can,
agreed.
and it's kind of hard. I can't necessarily pick up a blank and say that this is going to be the perfect blank for a certain bait. But what you find is when you make the rod, it really makes you in tune with one of your baits, or you might find, that a rod that you built for one purpose actually might work better for something
Right.
else, which is one reason, like, one of my pet peeves in the rod part of the industry is how rod companies a lot of times will label rods as spinnerbait or topwater or crankbait. And it's like, again, it goes back to, well, that might be a good crankbait rod for one person. It may not be for somebody else based on what they like to use with it. And I quickly became much more in tune with my gear, really,
Hmm.
when I was building my own rods. And the reality of it is, there's a lot of great rods on the market,
Yes.
but I've never found one that had all the components I wanted. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, all the way down to, like, where I like to position my bait keeper, like the type of grips I like to use, the different reel seats. And to be able to choose all that and make the rod that I would build if I could, and I do, uh, is pretty awesome to me. And, you mentioned when you catch a fish, like, the first time I caught a fish on a rod that I built, I think I smiled for hours.
I
It
guarantee
it
it.
it's one thing to catch a fish on, like, a jig or something that
Yeah.
you poured the head, you hand tied the skirt on, and, it was like, "This is a cool looking jig." To build a rod it feels much more intimidating, although it's not that much more intimidating, but it's so much more rewarding to catch them on a rod that you built. That's one of the cool things about it. But I mean, at this point now, for me, at the professional level, I mean, I truly believe that the rods give me advantage over the competition
I agree.
because they're my rods. I build them for the baits that I
Yep.
like to use, and to me, that's a huge thing. The only thing that I will say that I don't like about building my own rods is if I break one,
It
I got to
hurts.
build one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it it hurts you a little bit more.
I broke one last year that it was my own fault. I mean, it was my own
Mm,
fault, but I had it for 2 or 3 years and I really liked it. It was one of the first rods. I had it for a while actually. It's one of the first rods I ever built, and stuff is just it was beat up. I mean, it was just really beat up. But it kind of broke my heart a little bit when I broke it. Just because it had so many good memories of, the first time I put a rod together, I think I had more epoxy over me than I did on the entire rod, right? I had my hands sticking to the
yeah,
table, all kinds of stuff. It took the rod forever to dry. And because I used way too much epoxy on it and everything. And I still have that rod today. And I look at it, I'm like, man, thank God that I've come a little bit farther than that. My wraps are a little bit better
yeah.
and everything. But, you and I use stuff out of the same place. We get all our stuff from Mud Hole. And one of the videos that I have coming out tomorrow night is what I talked about on there is it's so cool to be able to call a place and literally have it be a one-stop shop because
Yeah.
everybody who answers the phone there builds rods. So they're going to know exactly how to direct you. And I picked up rod building later in life. I wish I would have done it even earlier than I have because exactly kind of to the same thing that you said. I agree 100% when you said it puts you more in tune with the baits. I don't know why exactly, but when I build a rod for a bladed jig or when I build a rod for a swim jig, there's just something about it. It's exactly the reel seat I wanted, exactly the measurement that I wanted. It feels a lot more comfortable for me. And after a while, I started thinking, and maybe you feel the same way, that the rod actually felt more like an extension of my wrist, my forearm. It felt more comfortable for me than ones that I had bought in the store, and maybe that just has to do with I was a person that made it. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I really do, and I mean, I'll even make adjustments. So, I'll build the rod based on what I think I want my original measurements to be, and then it's like, man, I'd like maybe just a little bit of a softer tip. Maybe I'll slide the reel seat down just a tad, or maybe I want it to be a little bit faster and a little bit heavier action, so I can slide the reel seat up. Like, you can play when you recognize when you start rod building, you start recognizing all these little differences in how you can change the performance of your rod,
Mhm.
and that's such a valuable thing. basically, what you just said about Mudhole with respect
Mhm.
to their customer service. One thing that so I was down there to see the new Mudhole facility.
Yep.
I guess it was last January, probably, or
Mhm.
February. It was before the start of the year, so about a year ago. And it's an amazing facility, but one of the most critical things that I saw that kind of really blew me away is when you call their customer service line, you're talking to somebody that is right at their store room, right at their
Yep.
storefront. So, like, if you call them up and you say, "Hey, I need to know exactly what the difference between, uh, whatever, a nubbin or some little piece on a rod," they can literally walk from the floor, from their desk or their
Yep.
cubicle, 30 feet over to the showroom floor, and pull up every different rod component and look at it and tell you exactly what you need or don't need. You're not calling and getting somebody that's like going to pull something up on a computer, or they're not familiar with the rods. Like, these are people that are very experienced, and I think that's something that you almost have to have, because I think the majority of people out there would say it's pretty intimidating to think that they might build their own rods. The reality is it's only a handful of components,
Mhm.
and Mudhole, through either their customer service directly or their hundreds of videos that they put up on their YouTube channel, like, you you build the first couple rods and you don't even need anyone there to tell you how to go about and do it,
Right.
because they've got such a catalog of information to help you make your decisions. It's really a process that they've put in place that helps make the process of building the rods that much easier and that much unintimidating.
No, I agree 100%. My buddy Don Morse, who worked for American Tackle and now Foundation Outdoors, is the one who got me into rod building, and that's when I first found out about mud holes, because he literally sent me two or three, I think three mud hole videos. Said, "Watch this and do what they do."
Yeah.
And so after some trial and error of figuring out what stuff was, all of a sudden I'm like, hey, you know what? The first couple fish that I caught on this, the rod didn't blow apart. It did, it didn't fall apart. Eyes didn't explode. The reel seat didn't come off in my hands. Starting to get the hang of this. Located in Springfield, Illinois' largest selection of sports and sportswear, hunting, fishing, specialty shops and services, a 65-foot Ferris wheel, 16,000-gallon saltwater aquarium, and industry-leading knowledgeable employees. You don't take chances at Shields, ever. Go to shields.com. At Lure Parts Online, we have everything you need to make your own lures. Pour soft plastics, tie your own flies, build your own rods, and more. Easy ordering ensures you get your products quickly. You can build it all with Lure Parts Online. Achieving affordable innovation through novel concepts and in-house ingenious designs. Cascade cost-effective e-commerce practices directly market to consumers, cutting costs by 30% or more on average. Affordable innovation, superior quality. CastKing.com. Mudhole is your #1 resource for custom fishing rods. Mudhole is the world's largest supplier of rod building, tackle crafting supplies, and instruction. They have the best components and brands you trust. American Tackle, MHX, CRB, Pro Products, Fuji, REC, AFCO, Winthrop, and more. It's easy to build your next custom fishing rod at mudhole.com. Believing quality is measured by lifespan and harnessing their unique chemistry and engineering know-how. Dakota Lithium lasts 4 times longer, powering your passion with an 11-year warranty. Find out more at dakotalithium.com. There we go. Come here. Get in here. Yeah, nice fish right there. Hi, I'm Jim Crowley. Make sure you catch my show, Jim Crowley Outdoors, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, exclusively on Wired to Fish TV. Look for Jim Crowley Outdoors on Wired to Fish TV on free ad-supported streaming TV, including Plex, that can be downloaded in the App Store at Apple TV, Roku, Samsung, and others. We are back with Matt Stefan, and it wouldn't be live unless something goes wrong. So that, and you know what, that happens with a feed once in a while. I'm glad to see you back, Matt. You just kind of froze in place.
Yeah, we can have a world where we can have forward-facing sonar and see all the fish in front of us, and we can't have good internet.
No, you know what? It probably a pigeon flew in front of somewhere between me and you, and that's what just happens, man. That
I
just
mean,
happens.
North Central Wisconsin, I make no guarantees over my Wi-Fi.
That's right. That's right. Hey, and going from tackle, because I could talk rod building all night. I just absolutely love it, and it's fun. It's brought a whole new enjoyment to the sport for me. Just because now anything I go after, freshwater or saltwater, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to build a rod for this, and
Yeah.
go and that's a lot of fun. But you've also been involved on the tackle side of things. Uh, just designing and doing things, especially just like with the hover jig and the stuff with core tackle. And I love that hover jig, man. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to that, or what was your process? Do you remember when that first went? Hey, I think I'm going to try this.
Yeah. uh well, I mean, when I did it, I didn't necessarily do it with the idea that I would be starting a tackle company out of it. It really was just came out of the need for improving the technique of hover strolling. So hover strolling is where you take a 90-degree jig hook, insert it slightly behind the head of the worm, and then you take a nail weight and insert that into the front of the worm.
Mhm.
And like I was going out using this technique and just catching fish all day long. The problem was I was pretty much either losing the worm or losing a tungsten nail weight
Sure.
on every fish. And it was, I was going out catching 20 fish in a day doing it, but I was going through 3 bags of plastics, a couple of packs of tungsten nail weights, and it was just frustrating from that standpoint. So, I just started looking at it going, I think I can do this in a better way, and started tinkering with stuff because I've got all the do it molds and the lead
Hmm.
pots and everything here, and started kind of making some pretty rudimentary ones compared to what we've got now. But that was kind of the start of it. The funny thing is, uh with respect to core tackle, like the Johnny Schultz of Fish the Moment, he's the other half owner of Core Tackle, and I went to him and I'm like, dude, we're just friends. We were just talking. I'm
Hmm.
like, this is something that is working great for me after I made the first ones. And then we started talking like maybe we should try to bring it to market. And then, we started talking about a couple other designs we each had. And one of them, we had a very similar idea for what we call our ultimate swim bait head,
Hmm.
otherwise known as tush. And, that one was like, well, we can draw that up real quick. And, we made some prototypes of that. And next thing you know, we're talking to a production company and going down the path of actually looking at trying to build a brand out of it. And it's been way better than I ever thought it would be. Now, when I say that, it's not like a financial windfall by any means. In fact, Johnny nor I have really made any money off of it because you sell a product, and if you want to be able to sell more product, you reinvest in the company and
Right.
buy more inventory, and it's just kind of going all back into the company, and we're trying to build a brand. And for us, the cool thing is the success of it is allowing us to build other items that we've always kind of thought about and wanted to mess with. We're both tackle tinkerers. We both have had a bunch of ideas, and we've got some that we think are phenomenal, and we've got some that we think are like in logic awesome ideas. I just have no idea how to bring them to fruition. But uh, yeah, core tackle has been a really fun endeavor because for me, I was much more. You see the tournament side of things. You see the
Sure.
sponsors, you see the tournament side of things, but I never really got to see the true industry side of things. And core tackle now it's the industry. It's
Right.
behind the scenes in terms of
You're
production
in
and
it.
all. So yeah, now I kind of get to see everything, and it's pretty cool. And it's funny because we Johnny and I always joke about not having we don't know how normal tackle companies go about anything. So it's a pretty common response from people we're working with, whether that's production facilities or shippers or distributors and all that stuff. And we get a lot of common responses that are like, "You guys do everything backwards." And well, we
Well,
don't know how to do it. Like we're just doing what made sense to us, and in some cases it is backwards, and in other cases it's worked out pretty well. But it's a definite learning experience for us, that's for sure.
For sure. I've got and I love it. I just started fishing it a little bit or more last year and really liked it. Matter of fact, got a couple baits set up right here with it and wanted to ask you a question because it's so fun with the different weights and there's other companies that are out there doing, doing stuff like that now too, but everybody's going to fish it. I love you did a video recently I think on showing the three retrieves that you like the
Mhm.
most on Hover J. Now, I got a question, a personal question to ask you that hopefully this will help the audience too. I was fishing it mostly about on an 8 pound leader for the light wire hook size stuff anyway, for an 8 pound fluorocarbon leader. Would you or have you ever done it with a loop knot or do you tie it all the time? You tie it directly. And this is just something I was
Yeah.
theorizing that maybe the loop knot would give it a little bit more freedom of motion. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you can use both.
Okay.
My findings are I generally tie direct,
Okay.
and my findings are with that is the when I go to impart action into it. So one of the cool things about the hover rig is whether you're using it for a hover strolling technique, which is kind of where you're swimming it through the middle of the water column, or for suspending fish basically. Or my favorite way to fish it's actually much more like a Ned rig where I let it glide to the
Mhm.
bottom and then I pop
Right.
it off the bottom. In either of those instances,
Right.
every time you move your rod, if you tie direct, you have a better point of impact and you get better explosion of that bait. So say I let it fall like to the bottom, if I
Okay.
pop my wrist without having a loop knot, I get straight explosion off
Okay.
the bottom. And the cool thing is with a 90-degree jig hook in there, instead of the bait coming at you, it really wants to dart side to side. Uh, so I personally prefer to tie direct because of that. There are people out there that I know prefer the loop knot. I just tend to tie direct. I mean, you can do either, but I do think you get better. I don't know if you want to call it walking the dog or just
Sure.
darting motion if
Yeah.
you tie direct.
And I noticed because I was wondering about freedom of movement. Then we put a camera underwater to watch it,
Hmm.
and that's exactly what I saw with you. Your point of impact when without the loop knot tying direct seems to be a much more erratic motion
Yep.
when you pump the rod is what I noticed. So that's okay, good. So that's what I was thinking. I just wanted to see, but I'm sure there are people out there doing it more with a loop knot, and I'm sure it would work, especially maybe on the crappie size version of it. But yeah, I can see where direct tying would be more of that. One of my favorite baits to throw on it, and I'll put up here, and I think you did something a little while ago, but just your standard stick worm.
Yeah.
It's about my favorite way to throw a wacky worm
Yeah.
anymore because honestly, I like the hookups better. If you found one of the things, although the wacky worm to me is still one of the best ways to fish a plastic when you've got the water clarity for it, no doubt. The problem always has been is occasionally you get a hook that's going to embed itself back into plastic on certain things. And with the hover rig, I really have not noticed that happening. That hook is pretty free, but solid in one place. And your hookup ratio seems to be better with this when it's on a hover rig or
Yeah.
hover jig. Have you seen the same thing?
Yeah, well, I 100% agree with you. A soft stick bait is an amazing bait to put
Oh,
on it. You get some wild motion out of that thing. And it generates a ton of strikes. Like one of the first places I took it to test the prototypes was in Florida, and
sure.
I was actually just flipping around pad stems like they like to do down there, and uh, it it was it was like within minutes I had caught like 3 or 4, and I'm like, this is
It's
going
going
to
to
be
work.
good. Like this is
Yeah.
going to be good. And that was actually the same time when I went. I need a heavier hook in some of these models, which is why we have what we call our HD hover rigs, a little
Mhm.
heavier hook in some of them. But yeah, no, that's a great way to fish them. I will add a little nugget. We being Core Tackle, we've got a wacky rig hook coming out here
Cool.
real short. Hopefully for the Bassmaster Classic, and it's changed my wacky rigging. It's pretty awesome.
You have my undivided attention when that one comes out. I'll be interested to see that one. I love seeing people's new turns. I've always said competition breeds a superior product,
Yeah,
and it's cool. It's cool to see when somebody else's heads are outside of your own head, thinking about something. I'm going, man, I want to see what they're coming up with, and then you always get the same reaction. Why didn't I think of that? And
Yeah.
but you don't care because at that point you're like, I'm glad somebody came up with it and did it. One of the other things I noticed on your channel, and everybody that's going to see this, this is going to be not obviously on Facebook tonight, but this will be an episode for Wired to Fish TV as well as on our Roku and Fire TV channels. And for all that getting out there, I noticed one thing you said that I have been that I have felt is the truth. I felt this for years, and it's not always a bait that catches that makes a difference in an angler. I've always felt that if you don't understand or you don't realize what your bait is doing, you're missing strikes. And without people buying even a whole bunch of stuff, I've tried to tell anglers, and I want to see if you're curious and feel the same way, is that if you know exactly what your lures are doing, if you understand your equipment better, you're going to catch more fish. If you don't, I really feel that you're probably going to be missing some bites that you probably could have. Do you feel the same way?
100%. Absolutely. I mean, oh man, the biggest mistake I think a lot of anglers make with respect to baits are they just cast and wind.
You're
They
right.
don't, it's a straight retrieve back, and they don't fully understand that what the bait can do if you know what function to impart
Mhm.
into it. Meaning, like, when you one of the things that separates the best anglers out there from the average angler is their ability to know that if they twitch their rod, with a
Yep.
slight twitch, their
Yep.
bait does this. If they
Yep.
do it twice as hard, their bait does this. If they have a fish following it and they do it tap tap, that's what triggers the fish to go, right? Like, there's so many different things about all the baits out there, and that kind of goes back to the rod building too. I When you've got a bait that you really have confidence in, a lot of that is you just really understand how to work that bait. And if you have a rod that you feel really in tune with, you then know how to work that bait with that rod, and it's all one big perfect, like, unit. But I can't tell you how often I feel like you pick up a bait, and this is for me, I'm saying, even I pick up a new bait and I take it out and I'm like, man, I'm not
Mhm.
feeling it. Well, a big part of that is I don't know how to work the bait properly.
Right.
And that's just something that takes experience, where you learn how all the little movements of your rod tip, or all the different speed variations with the reel, and all the different things that the bait can do. You really need to learn it. It's one of the things. One of my sponsors, Berkeley, came out with the Credge, which is for forward
Right.
facing sonar. It's an amazing bait, but one of the pieces of feedback I gave to them was, this is a high level expert style bait, because there are so many different functions and movements you can get out of that bait, but you as the angler have to be so in tune with how that bait performs when you do the certain things with your rod tip, or you let it glide back, that it could be a bait that's overwhelming for a lot of the average anglers out there. But I'm telling you, if you find, like, if that's a bait that you go out and you figure out how to work, um it could be a deadly bait in your hands. But that's how a lot of baits are. A wacky rig, pretty straightforward bait to fish.
Yeah.
You start picking up a bunch of various hard baits and moving baits generally, and it's a lot more. It comes down to the user a lot more than the bait in terms of getting performance out of it. One one bait as an example for me was when the chatter bait first came out,
Mhm.
vibrating jig. Man, everyone's like, these things are so good. I picked it up. I feel like I threw it for probably a year and a half. Like, I was one of the early people to get into it. I generally feel like, I'm always watching what's coming out.
Sure.
And I picked it up, I took it out, and I'm like, "Oh, this is cool." I had very, very little success on it. And it was solely user error. Like, I was taking it out, fishing it pretty much straight retrieve, letting the bait do the action. And I was also fishing it with a big boot tail trailer, which in my opinion is not at all what you want on a
Right.
vibrating jig, because it,
Right.
it acts as an anchor. It doesn't allow the bait to dart and have
The hunt.
erratic motion.
Yeah.
And that's what, it took me a long time to figure out, oh man, a vibrating jig is a really good bait when the angler figures out how to use it. Meaning, lots of
100%.
rod snaps, lots of change up of speed with your reel. You're not casting and winding that. You're getting that bait to glide, that not glide, but to dart all over and create those erratic movements that generate the reactionary strikes out of the bass. And because of that, it is a bait. And I've heard similar stories from a lot of anglers
Mhm.
that it is a bait that is what I would consider more of a high level angler bait. Like it takes a lot to fish those, but when you figure that bait out, it's a deadly bait.
I've changed my rod type 3 times in 4 years, getting to the rod that I specifically
Yep.
want for a bladed jig, and one of the reasons I did that is since I build my own, I realized that there was a difference between putting a size 3 split ring and a size 4 split ring on the
Hmm.
bait. It gives me a different hunting action. I've also noticed that if you change the trailers, the shorter the trailer, the more the bait hunts. The longer the
Yep.
trailer, the more the bait stays in line. If you if you put too big of a swim bait trailer on there, it literally robs the vibration from the front of the blade a little bit
Yeah.
compared to if you put and there you are 100% correct. There's a lot of things that we can get even more out of those lures because the bait was actually a better bait when it first came out than we probably even realized. And all these years later, and as much as I love that lure, it's one of my favorite lures to make and one of my favorite lures to throw. I'm still learning new things about it every year. What you said
Yeah.
about changing that rod tip and doing that itching with that bait, uh, that's true. A straight retrieve will catch him. When you start letting that bait drop into holes and drop over things and change your retrieve speed and everything, that really changes things up. You talked about that credge, which I got to go to the Berkeley place in Spirit Lake years and years ago and met John Prochnow, who did Gulp, right?
Yep.
Brilliant, brilliant guy. Those guys at Berkeley are amazing. And the stuff and the intelligence that they put into that. When you said about that high level bait, one bait that I remember just when Rapala came out with the shadow rap, and I throw a lot of, and I've
Mhm.
been with Rapala forever. Until I can still tell people that when you throw slack back to that bait, it will turn around. But if they didn't see that commercial or don't understand that, they're missing 50% of what that bait is doing.
Yeah.
And I bet that Credge is probably the same way. It's an intelligent, it was made intelligently, and there's probably a lot you're probably even going to learn on it this year, aren't you?
It's just it goes back to time on the water and paying attention to like what the bait's doing. I can't tell you how important I think it is to fish in clear water a lot of times just so you can watch your bait. And
Yes.
you can see what
Yes.
the bait does with a light rod tip movement, what you can see what it does with a good twitch or reel handle. Like that's one thing I've been getting sucked into the glide bait fishing, big glide baits, and
Yep.
I mean that's another whole category of baits that in my mind are more high level because
Mhm.
uh every one of those stupid things works differently. Some of them you work with rod twitches, some of them you work with just reel handle turns, some of them need high, are faster retrieve style baits, and it's like I think it's one reason why you see like the best glide bait fishermen out there generally have like a handful of favorite baits. And it's because those are the ones that they have really dialed in because it took them a lot of time to figure it out. But going back full circle to what you said in the beginning, it is so important for the angler to recognize what their bait is doing. You need to know, does the when you stop the bait, does it sink? Does it suspend? Does it slow sink? Does it slowly rise? Like, if you stop it by the end of a tree and you give the rod a hard twitch, with your rod tip in a certain direction, you can make your bait go into the tree, you can make it go around the tree, around a branch. Like there really is high level stuff that you can do with a lot of baits. And the fact of the matter is most anglers are not that in tune with their baits. And I mean, I'm not sitting here saying I have every bait dialed in. I generally have a handful of baits that I feel very, very comfortable with,
Mhm.
and that's what I throw in tournaments until I find something that I think is better.
And it was a buddy of mine just came on here a little while ago. Andy Wagger said, "Hey, congrats on the win at lacrosse because we both fished there, both love that
Thank you.
place."
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was obviously a great win for you. And I'm sure there's more coming. Lacrosse can be an awesome area as you obviously know, and and that was just a great accomplishment for you. And I know you're looking forward to a great season. So, and I just want to tell you, I appreciate, and everybody watching tonight, and who will get to see this after we put it out on the other channels. uh, Appreciate your honesty, and I just love that. I love somebody who's straightforward, and you're learning at the same time you're teaching. We all are, honestly.
Yeah.
There's certain baits that I want to get better at that I'm not going to talk to anybody about yet because I don't know enough about it yet. And I love how you said that there are some baits that have even been out for a while that the more we play with them, probably the better we're going to get with them. We just didn't understand all the stuff that they can do. And one of the things I want to ask you real quick, and then we'll let you go, but a lot of the baits that have come out for forward-facing sonar, I think it's important for people to know, not all of them, but some of them, they can still use and catch fish without forward-facing sonar. These baits are still going to
Yeah.
work. The hover jig is one of those things. Do you have a couple other baits that you're thinking of that, hey, people could catch fish even if they're not using FFS?
Yeah, I that's a whole nother topic, forward
Sure,
facing sonar. But
sure.
the from a bait perspective, I mean, I personally don't feel like there are baits that tend to perform better if you're watching them on forward facing sonar. But
Mhm,
the reality is, if those baits are generating strikes on forward facing sonar, they 100% will be successful as baits without forward facing sonar. The fact is they're generating strikes from those fish. So you can take them and fish them wherever. Like the hover rig a lot of times gets thrown into forward facing sonar. And the reality is like that's not how I use it. I mean, I do use it that way, but that's not generally how I use it or how we intended it
mhm,
necessarily to be used, because really when that technique of hover strolling came out, forward facing sonar wasn't even a thing, and it was still a phenomenal way to catch fish. So from that standpoint, yeah, there's going to be a lot of baits coming out by all companies, I feel like, and they're going to be probably marketing them towards forward facing sonar. The reality is they're going to be baits that you can use for whatever other scenarios that you want to fish. And I would counter that by saying every bait that's out there is a forward facing sonar bait,
there you
meaning,
go.
as far as I know, there's not one bait on the market that you can throw and not see on your forward facing sonar unit. The really, when people are saying they're making baits that are optimized towards forward facing sonar, it's just they perform better as a bait that you're watching on the screen. And I don't necessarily mean they show up better. I mean,
Mhm.
you can get them to perform at a certain water column or to trigger those fish that you know are behind it into generating strikes. But yeah, it's it's kind of one of those things where you're like, well, isn't every bait a forward facing sonar bait? And if they are, then every bait isn't a forward facing sonar
Forward-facing
bait.
sonar bait.
And it really just comes down to the angler at that point, whether they want to use the technology or not. But um, yeah.
Yeah, and you're right, and but no, I agree with you, and I think it goes back to what we both agreed on before, is that the more you understand what your lures do, the more potential you have to put fish in a boat.
Yeah.
That
I mean, that's
you know,
really what it is. I mean, it's all about control. It's all about mechanics. And a lot of that comes back down to experience. And, you'll run into anglers who only throw like one or two baits.
mhm,
No matter the conditions, the time of year, they are whatever crankbait guy, and they're a
yep,
guru at it. And if you get good enough at it, you can make them work year round doing, fishing anywhere, shallow to deep. And I mean, there's plenty of people out there that all they throw are soft stick baits. And you know what? A soft stick bait can be fished on 10 different
right.
techniques. And from that,
Yeah, it definitely can. Um, Matt,
from
I hope we didn't
one
I hope
foot
we didn't
down to
freeze.
50 feet of
There
it.
you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you
Oh,
were coming back. There you
yeah.
are. Good. Okay. Um,
Okay.
what I was gonna say is, no, I agree 100%, and it really comes down to us being intelligent anglers. And fish only bite for basically two reasons: one, because they're hungry, and two, because they react to something. It's our job as an
Mhm.
angler to make them react. And that's what one of the reasons. Again, I'm just going to go back to this, and then we're going to let you go. Is why I think your channel is so informative. So with all the information that you pass on, if anybody's been living under a rock and they don't know how to see anything about Matt Stefan, can you tell them your social media stuff just so they can go and check you out? Because I honestly believe you're one of the most straightforward, honest guys out there, and I love the information that you're putting out for everyone.
Well, I appreciate that, Jim, and I am a as I mentioned earlier to you before we started, I'm a pretty average angler in terms of the world, like from a entertainment standpoint. Like my goal is not to go out there and make fake entertainment to try to get people to laugh or get the clicks on my views. I'm basically just putting what I hope is educational information out there to help us all catch a few extra fish, which in my mind then, gets people on the water and enjoying the outdoors, which for me is, a huge part of my life and something I absolutely love to do. So as much as I'd love to have big fireworks and crazy stuff going on my channel, probably not going to happen.
Yep.
But
Me
it's
either.
it's definitely more of an educational approach. If people want to check that out, I'm all for it. Matt Stefan Fishing on YouTube. It's pretty much Matt Stefan Fishing on all the different social media channels, but YouTube is the one that I concentrate on, and uh, it's a fun time. When I started it, I didn't know what to expect. I really didn't know if I would even enjoy it, and I've really found to enjoy, YouTube and making, short educational videos.
And you're very good at it. There's enough noise and enough fluff out there. I can't tell you folks enough out there that going to Matt's channel, you're not going to have that noise and you're not going to have that fluff. You can have good, solid information, and that, in my opinion, is the best there is. Matt, thank you so very, very much. I appreciate taking your time. I know your kids were busy working on those jigs, helping you get ready for stuff. I love that. That was great. Um, God bless you, brother. I hope that you have continued success. I hope you have a great rest of the season. We'll all be watching. We'll all be cheering for you because, in my opinion, you're one of the good ones. And I really appreciate you taking your time to be here.
Well, thanks, Jim. I appreciate the kind words, and, yeah, let me know if you wanna have me back on. I'd love to do it again.
Well, I guess we'll just have to do that. So there you go. We'll
Sounds good.
get you back on for sure. So safe travels, my friend. Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Make sure if you're in the Springfield, Illinois area, Shields Fish Fest is coming up March 9th. Looking forward. That is on Saturday. Looking forward to that. I'm checking my calendar for another thing here. Yep. Lure Parts Online. Let me get you a code here from Lure Parts. We're coming out. We've got some new plastics coming out. Um, so just so you know, there's going to be some new jig heads. There's a whole bunch of new stuff coming out. Our friends over at Casking, I said in the beginning of the show that Casking's coming out with new stuff, and Jose Cinco, who we had as last guest, said we're coming out with new stuff. Casking's always coming out with new stuff. There's always new stuff out there. So if you go to casking.com, anything that you decide to get at Casking, put in the code right there, JC52AFF. You'll get 20% off everything on the Cast King site. Our friends from Mudhole, you both heard and both obviously know by now that Matt and I both work with Mudhole, and that's how we build all our rods, all our components, everything that you could ever possibly want for education and information when it comes to rod building. You can find at mudhole.com. Also, our friends at Dakota Lithium. Hey, if you're interested in getting some lithium batteries, no company supports the sport of fishing. No battery company supports the sport of fishing like Dakota Lithium does. Fantastic company, 11-year warranty, incredible batteries. Here's a code right here. Put in the code SlickFish10. You will get 10% off anything on Dakota Lithium. So that is the code SlickFish10. God bless you all. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.